All opinions expressed on Crosstabs are those of Bryan and Reagan and do not reflect the views, thoughts, or opinions of individual legislators or the Legislative Assembly. Relax. Some things are just for fun. Guests likewise join the show to express personal views and opinions. We desperately hope they say something funny or entertaining, but thoughts shared, whether entertaining or stultifying, are those of the individual and separate from any role or a title a guest may possess. Enjoy the show. Or don't. But don't go whining about it if it's the latter.
We're clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
So, are you looking it up on your phone?
Yes.
We're in it's called Kierland area, so it's like North Scottsdale.
Hmm.
It's like literally, I'm like 2 miles from where they do the Waste Management Open, is where our place is. And so it's kind of nice. So it's you got like North Scottsdale, like you can kind of go up to Cave Creek and kind of that area, and then like Old Town Scottsdale is probably like 15 minutes, which isn't too bad.
Nice.
And then the 101, so it's kind of up around the 101 that loops all the way around Phoenix, so it's kind of nice. So you can kind of get everywhere you want to go, and we're only like 22 to 25 minutes from the airport.
What's funny is you zoom out and you're like, golf course, golf course, golf course. They're everywhere just outside of the city. That's kind of cool.
There's lots of golf courses, Reagan. I need more decades so I can play all the golf courses. The problem is like with the golf courses, they have these like packages, and you can, if I ever get to retire, we could stay down here for a month or two. You can buy these like golf passes for 5 or 6 golf courses, right? And then you can play them, every day if you want or what have you. But then you're only playing those 5 or 6 golf courses. And like many other things, like playing a new golf course is always the most fun you'll ever have on a golf course because it's
Right.
fun to kind of explore a new golf course.
You're like, you kind of get up to the, oh shoot, there's the one that I went to. We visited in, I think it's the Running Wild golf course at K Falls.
Yeah.
And there's that hole that you just start just like what feels like the top of a mountain, and the bottom of the hole is way down there. And that's
Yeah.
my favorite hole because I golf almost never, but you're almost guaranteed to hit the fairway and you're almost guaranteed to make it a long way because you're up so high. And I'm like, that's the advantage I need on every hole is to be up really high.
As long as you hit it straight.
Usually I can, or what I do is I just know I'm gonna because I haven't worked on my swing enough. I know I'm gonna hook it right, so I just aim like way far left and then boom, it hooks
Yeah,
to be straight. So
that's
I don't
crazy.
golf enough to have to fix it yet.
Well, it's fun. We're only here for the quick weekend. It was a kind of a culmination of things. So we got down last night and busted out of the capital sometime in the afternoon, flew out of Eugene and got down here, and then watched Mission Impossible 7 last night.
Oh,
It's kind of
nice.
a pretty good one. Tom Cruise is just kind of on a roll, man. That guy is
So
making,
is the new one? Do you watch the new one, or you're watching the one right before the one that comes out?
yeah, the one right before, because I knew
Dead Reckoning,
number,
which
yeah,
is, by the way, the best name for a movie. Mission
yeah,
Impossible: Dead Reckoning. I mean,
yeah.
how does it get better than that?
It must be the last one, you would think, right? I mean, I don't know. What's Tom Cruise like 64 years old, 65, but
Yeah,
he looks like
they
he's
have
40 still.
Yeah, they call this one Final Reckoning, and it is supposed to be sort of like a culmination. But they're gonna recast probably Chris Pratt because he is in everything. But they'll recast the show or the movie, and Tom Cruise will like pop up for cameos just to make sure
Yeah,
just to make sure he can pay
stay
his electric
relevant.
bill or whatever.
He probably
But
owns it because I saw his name on the producing. But anyways, yeah, and then Alex, our oldest, is completed his first year college, so at Grand Canyon, kind of
congratulations.
cool. So he's moving all of his stuff into the garage, which is kind of nice. Plus, I think 3 or 4 other kids that were able to coerce their stuff into the garage instead of into a storage unit.
You have
And
a truck, you have a garage, and then
yeah.
it's just like you lost. You've just lost at that moment.
Oh, he became the, because he's a pretty good kid, and so he became like the mover because he's got
Oh
a
yeah.
truck, he's got his F-150 down here,
Hmm.
and then everybody, especially the girls, and of course he can't say no to girls, so when they is like, oh, I don't really have anybody to help me get my stuff out, so he said he spent the whole week like moving stuff in the evening, and I'm like, well, are you at least getting gas money? And he's like, no, I don't want to ask him for gas money. And I'm like, wow.
They're all too poor for gas money too.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So, and there's some parents all down here. So we have some friends. And then Vicky has a wedding shower to go to tomorrow. So she'll go to a wedding shower. So we'll have to come back. They're getting married Memorial Weekend, which must be in my theory. And it's at, one of the posh resorts. But I guarantee like
Mhm.
Memorial Weekend is the start of like the cheap season because it gets so hot, right? So everybody probably wants to get married in the winter. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't think because by the end of May, it'll be cooking down here, right? It's going to be 104, 105 every day, probably. So that one will come down. That will be quick. We'll probably fly down like Saturday morning, and the wedding is like Sunday. So we'll do that and then, fly back. And then we won't, I don't plan on being back here over the summer at all. So, and not until
Right.
Alex will have to come back. They start school, Grand Canyons, they go like late August, they start. So,
Ooh.
yeah, that first month he said is pretty brutal. It's pretty hot, and then but I think it helps acclimate the kids to then they appreciate it when
Hmm.
it's 90 in October. And,
Yeah.
and then down here, like the season is, Halloween the day after apparently is when all the Canadians come. So that's therein lies the season, right? And then they all probably
Fascinating.
sometime in April. But yeah, and then it's what also is fascinating. I'm trying to get a meeting with Warren Peterson, the state Senate Majority Leader, as he's running
Yeah.
for Attorney General. So I'd love to get on that race. I know that TJ listens to the podcast every now and again, so maybe he can put it. And heck, he's the Senate Pro Tem, so maybe he's the next Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah.
Which
No,
would
I
be
think that is we met some of these guys. We didn't get to meet Warren, but I've seen him in
oh,
clips and everything, and he's good. Or at least I didn't get to meet Warren. You guys might have had a chance to meet with him. But he's really good. He is a straight talker. And what's super crazy is he just tweets and you can see in his Twitter feed like what he's thinking, what he's working on, all that stuff. Like right after the election, he had these just amazing tweets. He was just out there being like, I just went out there and I said, these are the seats we need to win. And I didn't care if the candidate was going to vote for me for Senate president or if they hated my guts. We just went out there and we were going to win them. And that's how we grew our majority. And
yeah,
I totally respect him
and they
for all that.
did.
And they
Which
did.
is crazy. Arizona, I mean, actually went. It was one of those states that moved further right. And they thought they were stuck in the Senate. They thought they were stuck kind of 16-14. Same makeup as Oregon, by the way, as far as I mean, they're slightly different. Like the representatives, all they have representative A and B in the same Senate district. So the representatives actually represent the same number of people as the senators.
Which is wild.
Yeah, so they don't split that district into two. So
Yeah.
the so you get basically a House rep A and B, and then you get a senator. And but they picked up another seat at 17-13 in the Senate, and then they picked up a few more in the House. So,
Hmm.
and I was looked at the numbers there and talked with TJ a few times about kind of the races, and he was like, and he's right, like number 18 for the Senate is a pretty tough pickup for them. It
Oh
starts
yeah.
getting into some deeper blue territory, but they feel like they could possibly get to 19. So there's some areas around
Wow.
Mesa where they're looking to recruit some candidates and stuff. And I was looking at them. I'm like, geez. And their Mesa area, Reagan, I mean, was probably like +6, +7 D. And I'm like,
That's it.
geez, we win that all day
Jeez.
long back home.
I know, I
So,
know. It's so painful to go to these other states and be like, just to fight to survive, we have to hold these like D plus five, six, seven,
yeah.
8 seats. And they're like, oh, how do you win those? We can't win those here. And you're just like, What? Now,
Mhm.
important things. They have different voter registration
They
makeup.
do.
A lot of them have redistricting that was not aggressively partisan. Is either I think Arizona has a commission. Now the commission has, I think, been previously rigged by Democrats at various times, and they are in a just you read daily, if you read Arizona legislative news, they are in daily battles with their governor and their secretary of state and their attorney general, who I think they're all Democrats. I think their treasurer is a Republican. So they've got these, because these statewide officers came in when Trump wasn't on the ballot
Yeah.
they were in 22 and some of them in 20. And so now in 2024 where they made all these gains and so they have a legislative majority. They've been actually crazy ideas actually scrutinizing the governor's picks for agencies. What an idea. Do you think if Democrats did that in Oregon we would actually have more functional agencies? They're like, actually, this person that you picked who might say yes to everything you want but is totally unqualified for this job, maybe let's not. No, they would never. It's so funny because Senate Democrats have said, "Yo, these guys are all vetted," and then you like ask them, it's like, "So did you vet them?" No, no, the governor's office vetted them. It's like, "Oh, okay, all right, yeah, we would never. We just, we just rubber stamp things here."
Yeah, Hobbs is the Democrat governor down here, and
Yeah,
she's the one that beat Carrie Lake when Carrie Lake ran, and um, and Hobbs is pretty far to the left, and I think that but it goes to show you that I think a normal electorate, which I think that's more what Arizona is going to probably
hmm,
want a little bit of balance of power, right? So, and they've had to do that. I think the Arizona Repu in the state Senate and the House, they've had to do some balance of power work that's made them, maybe moderate some of their issues a little bit to make sure
yeah,
the governor doesn't veto them, right? Because she's vetoed some of,
right.
and then they've sent some political bills up, which is kind of nice. It's fun to send the political balloons up to have her pop them, right? Because then you can use that as wedge issues for you, where you believe that you're going to win, and so it's worked out pretty well for the Republicans, I think, with this next race in 26, the governor's race, which I would love to get on, but I doubt it because it's going to be Karen Taylor Robeson, who's a billionaire, who lost to Carrie Lake in the primary last time, which is
Yeah.
interesting. So she's already announced and she's running. So they're going early. And it was always, we were talking last week, right, with Commissioner Willis about, the U.S. Senate stuff in Oregon. And I think I even said, geez, it just seems so early, and Helfrich's already, saying he's running for state Senate and stuff. And then you start kind of looking around the country and you're like, I don't know, people are already starting to throw markers down. It's pretty quick.
No, you have to. And I think, I mean, we saw there was something in the Oregon Catalyst about Danielle Bethel, who's already on our candidate tracker as a likely person looking to run for governor. And so I like to see people get out there early,
Yeah.
even if it's just to get your basics going, get your website going, get your fundraising going, start meeting with people. You don't have to be out there doing rallies. You don't have to be out there, knocking doors. No one's going to remember a door that you
Yeah,
knocked,
no.
this far out. But you got to get your infrastructure going. You got to you can get your message honed over that time. So
Yeah.
that by the time you're talking to voters, you're not refining your message. You're all the way locked in, and then just be ready to have an apparatus that can adapt, because we think we're just going to guess. We could do a poll and say here's the top three issues, and those issues are going to be totally different by the time
Yeah,
the election
I
comes
know.
around.
I
But
uh I
it's a
think I've
contrast.
seen some people floating around some polling and stuff, and I'm like, why are you even polling? Like
Yeah.
it makes no difference if one thing is 6 points higher today, or homelessness is their top issue and crime. Like we have no idea what the map's going to look like in a year, right? As far as the lay of the land with messaging, because I mean, part of that is because Trump is literally a messaging machine, right? I mean, he walks to the helicopter. You couldn't understand what Joe Biden was saying, but he walks to the helicopter and drops like four bombs on the way
Yep.
to the
Yep.
helicopter, right?
Hmm.
It's like
Yep.
holy moly, what? What did he just say? I mean, you live a week's worth of comms in a day with Trump, or 5 minutes usually. And
Right.
so um which I think is good and bad. There's a lot of good and bad I have with that, but I think is what I like about Trump is he lays his comms on his shoulder, right on his sleeve, as they say, and he just lets it fly. And I think you can you can be angry at that if you're staff. You're sometimes going, "What did you just say?" Staff freaks out and all the things, but at the end of the day, just like we were talking about Warren Peterson, like he just goes out on X and he's just firing. He's great. He's a great follow on X. So if you're a
Hmm.
solid
Yep. I'll link his
conservative,
account in our show notes because
yeah,
it is
he's
really
a
good.
fun one to follow, and he's out there pounding pavement already, right? Like you said, he's honing message is what he's doing. He's trying to figure out how do I run for attorney general and what is my message? What do I do about the border? What do I do about fentanyl? What do I talk about with criminals? Like he's kind of honing in that message and probably hopefully raising a buttload of money along the way. And then that's kind of what you do. And I think going early makes sense. I think that, if you're going to put a website out there like Daniel Bethley, I mean, you might as well just announce it. I mean, because I think Catalyst just took stuff right off our website and said, looks like you're running, your website and your pack has changed. And I think people don't really want to make a formal announcement, until they've kind of maybe done some of the work, but sometimes it just happens that way.
I also think that it's kind of an interesting, and I think we don't do this enough. I mean, I see a lot of people talking about like, well, here's the policy they're passing in other states and whatever. And I was like, well, Oregon's different makeup though. So you can't look at the policy, but what you
No,
can look at is the strategy. And that's what we ought to be looking at is the strategy. What do Arizona Republicans do to win in the legislature? What do Florida Republicans do to win in the legislature? And man, we should be copying Florida because they have won so much. And speaking of being tired of winning, the Democratic Party in Florida is dead, says the top Florida Senate Democrat. So the Senate Democrat leader said, he's the minority leader in the party.
yeah,
He's the guy with the most influence in the Senate. He
yeah.
probably has pretty good influence amongst Democrats in Florida and their donors. He said, I would rather not be the minority leader of a dead party. I'm just going to go, I think he's going to go independent,
Yes, isn't that or non? He went non-affiliated, so he
non-affiliated. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
because I think they have independent on there too. I know it's literally like Daniel Bonham or Tim Knopp,
Right.
Fred Gerard, literally leaving the Republican Party to say you guys suck. I'm leaving to go be a non-affiliated. But I mean, that is wild to have your top Senate leader come out. It's one thing to lose to have a Boquist go independent or usually out of frustration, right? Some of those guys tend to do it. But for somebody to literally leave and then say the party is dead when this is the state that was battleground, purple for the country for
Hmm.
probably 10, 15 years. And the last 10, what, probably, I guess it must have been, well, I mean, DeSantis definitely killed it, right? I mean, he came in
Yeah.
and he showed how to win governor and just demoralize the Democrat Party.
But even then, when he won his first election, what was it, 2018, it was 49 and a half to 49 and point
That's
20.
close, yeah.
So, I mean, it was the closest, one of the close elections. So 2018, Florida, swing state. 2020, 2022, 2024, Florida, not a swing state. And a lot of that had to do with policy. A lot of that had to do with being open during COVID. So a bunch of people moved there, had a lot to do with the economic boom that they're having. So a lot of people are moving there, right? There's certainly lots
Yeah.
of reasons, but
Well,
also
people
just,
move there. I think they say, it was kind of funny because we always blame Californians for ruining Oregon, which is probably true. And then, but in Florida, it was kind of the other way. I think their politics really has helped shape who wants to move to Florida. I think COVID, they had a huge influx of people that were fleeing blue states moving to Florida because it was free, right? And I think and that's just that trend has just kind of continued. And also, I mean, their politics, it's not, DeSantis is not, it's not crazy. He's just doing the blocking and the tackling. Lower taxes, and even their tax rate there is still pretty high, but they just don't have the income tax, right? So it's all sales tax driven, it's all tourist driven and stuff. But
yeah,
they've really gone after some of the social issues that they think are far to the left, hammered them home, stayed true who they are, and they want smaller government, all the things. But also, I think he does a good job of when all they had the emergencies there, the hurricanes, things like that. He shows you how to govern. Like he is literally on the ground and he doesn't leave until it's over. And I think there's really something. I think DeSantis I'm sure JD Vance will be our presidential nominee, but I mean, a lot can happen. He could flip
What,
up.
you haven't seen
Oh,
the Trump 2028 hats, Brian?
yeah, I know.
Just I think what's really funny about that is I think that is it could be Eric sort of starting his run. It could just be trolling, but Democrats are going to fall for it 100%. They're going to spend
Yeah,
so much energy on it. And this is the thing talking about Trump with messaging, and this is why Republicans need to be really thoughtful about how we handle 2026 because there's two paths that come out of 2026. One is remaining a competitive party in the state of Oregon, and one is becoming the Florida Democratic Party. Completely irrelevant, completely erased. And like when Republicans won in 2024, the legislature, after that election, multiple Democrats who barely won their seats flipped parties so that they could be in the majority and
yeah.
not lose in 2026. And I don't know that we'll have any party flippers, but the problem that we have is we're in the super minority by one seat in both chambers. It's 18-12 in the Senate and it is 36-24. In the House, the problem is most of the swing seats were not close in 2024 for our candidates that lost. And in the future election, they're going to target the Javity seat on the coast, 32. They're going to target the Mannix seat, 21 in Salem, and Democrats already have a pretty good and effective and functional machine in Salem, as we saw with the Kramer race. And they're going to target House District 52, which is open because Helfrich is running for Senate, right? Which he
Hmm.
won. So you've got three more defense that you got to play in 2026, which
He'll be open.
right now is a midterm, which means it's probably based on history going to go against Trump. Okay, so that's the challenge with that. Then we have to find is there anywhere that we can pick up seats and based on the 24 election results, it doesn't look awesome. Now you can change that with good candidates, you can change that with retirements, all these things that we can't predict right this minute. The Senate, there's one place to go. It's golden seat, right, to get you back to 13. And then you basically got to pick your best candidates in every seat and then see if something opens up or try to make something up.
Yeah,
But for Republicans, I think our biggest problem is we're trying to respond to Democrats on every single issue because that's what you're tempted to do in the minority. Oh, this bill's on the floor. We got to respond to that. Oh, this bill is in committee. Got to respond to that. Oh, this news story is there. We got to respond to that. I think we got to stop doing that because it spreads our message too thin, and because of the way the media is in Oregon, where we don't have a strong media, so it's hard to get a message out. Most of our press releases, you could just take all of the journalists off of it and just send to the building, and they'd have the exact same effect. Most of these releases never escape the
yeah.
building, right? So we need to hone our message and have it be consistent and really only ever talk about three things. We need to decide what those three things are. But I think number one is definitely corruption. There's just rampant corruption and incompetence in this government, and we just need to point it out. That should be, I think that's separate from accountability, by the way. I think it's just point
Yeah.
to corruption. Hey, look, more corruption. Hey, look, more incompetence day after day after day all the time. Those should be the words that we're known for. We had the culture of corruption in 2023 that
Yeah.
we were just pounding with OLCC and Lamoda and Shamia Fagan, right? And then go to the accountability piece. And then kind of the third issue, I think, should be more along lines of what we would do differently, right? But if we try to message on everything, no one's ever going to hear our message. We're in the minority. We're already a weaker voice. So we have to speak clearly and effectively and say the same thing. All of us that are there saying the same thing, going the same direction. And if we don't figure that out for 2026, what's going to happen is we're going to come back to the legislature with 21 in the House and 12 or 11 in the Senate. And if we thought we were irrelevant in the super minority, forget it. I mean, it's over.
Wow, look at you. You've already laid it out.
Well, I've been thinking about it. I spent my entire commute back from Salem yesterday thinking about this, going, "Oh, 2026 is actually like make or break for us in a lot of ways."
Well, I definitely would agree that it's make or break because there's a couple of seats that you were kind of pointing to that we nearly, I mean, nearly won in 22 when Vicky was leader. beyond
Yep.
winning the ones, but we won. I mean, we came, what, 140 votes in House District 40, 450 votes in 48, I mean, 900 votes in Gresham. Like, these are super close races. 900 votes in the other seat there in Gresham, right? Both those seats came with came super close, and then Fairview in that area, and then even in Springfield, I mean, we were on Lively's heels like super close, and those ones all kind of rolled back, and I think they rolled back because it was a Trump year. And I think that, and I think a lot of people are looking at 2018 to try to compare to this like midterm stuff, but I really think that it's a different Trump in 24 that won, and we're seeing a different scenario. In 2016, if you think about it, we should have won in 2016 as a legislature. I mean, we foobarred that. And I wasn't part of
Yep.
the we, so I'm not laying any deficit to that part. But because that turned out to be a good year for us, and there was a lot of things that got left off the table. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. But 18 then became a slaughter fest for Oregon because Trump was just so, and I don't even think Trump knew what he was doing. It was kind of like, holy shit, I just beat Hillary Clinton. And I think it then the backlash kind of was pretty severe, but I think now we've seen a culture shift. You've had COVID, you've had all the things that I think has kind of culture shifted. So theoretically, I would imagine there's going to be a little bit of a backlash in congressional stuff, but we didn't tip right during 24. So we actually tipped back left. Clackamas County went left. Some of those other areas where we really tipped them to the right in 22, and also the other campaigns that were working tipped them to the right. You know, uh, Statewide, it really stayed about the same, right? I mean, if you look at 2018, 2022, I mean, Drazen got the same vote as 20, Bueller got 43.5%. We saw that in 24 statewide, but that changes as it filters down to these districts, these House districts, these Senate districts. And you could say the reverse happened. What should have happened in our seats, I think, in Oregon, that happened in Arizona, where you had, this U.S. Senate seat went left, right? Kerry Lake loses. Trump wins
Yep.
the state, and then the state Senate, state House pick up seats.
Yep.
So I think there's just a they were able to strategy wise disconnect themselves from Trump and then talk about the state issues that matter. And they might have had the border and a few other things down here that gave them some more like local issues to wedge against. But I mean, our plan, before your dad left as minority leader when Tim was there. I mean, we came down to the border about a year ago. We were here, right? We went down to the border, and our goal was to make the border issue an Oregon issue. And that was kind of our comms and stuff, but it just disappeared. So I
Yeah.
think, and maybe because those guys, the new leaders, didn't come to the border. I don't know. They didn't
I
want
think that
they would
I
give
think
us
there
any credit,
definitely
but we
seems
were
to
on something.
be us. I definitely agree with you. And I think there's definitely a segment of the R's that are afraid to talk about this issue, but it is a issue the base cares about, non-affiliated independent voters care about, and even some Democrats. And so I think being scared of the issue shows a lack of leadership,
Hmm.
honestly. And it's like you have to not be afraid of the issues that voters are talking about. Because I think this is the thing too. We try to pick the issues. We don't get to pick the issues.
Yeah.
The voters
Yeah.
dictate what the issues are. They just want to know how we're going to handle them. And so if they don't know how we're going to handle them, guess what? They're not going to vote for us. That goes
Yeah.
with this is why when Republicans run from life and the Second Amendment, again, it's not the thing you have to campaign on, but when you run from those issues, those voters don't trust you. It's the same on taxes. It's the same on business regulation. It's the same on immigration, the border, and illegal immigrants and how many services are we going to pay for them?
All right.
Right? All of these issues, the budget, when you run from them, when you're afraid of the issue, when you're afraid of gas taxes, when you're afraid, don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of the issues. Lay it out. Lay out the truth. Talk about what Democrats aren't saying. Talk about what Democrats aren't willing to do, and then be willing to say and do those things, the things that you believe in. But I don't think we have enough beliefs. I think we've sent too many people to Salem who would rather react as they're getting emails and calls from their constituents than believe something. And I think we have to get back to letting our legislators believe things, have beliefs, stick to
Hmm.
those beliefs and go and do something. Okay. It would be really easy for, we're going to talk about housing in a minute. It'd be really easy for all the Republicans to say, well, we're a little bit scared of how certain organizations on the right and left deal with land use. So we're just not going to talk about it. We're just not going to talk about housing. We're just not going to talk
Yeah,
about
right.
land use because it's scary. No, we can't. We can't on the one hand say, there's some data and reports that show that Kotek is not going to meet her 36,000 units goal. In fact, right now she's on track to do worse under her term than we did when her term started. Okay? So if we're going to say, well, she's failing at this goal, are we also going to say, but we would also fail at the goal because we aren't willing to do the things that fix it? It's like, well, that message is incredibly unclear. Voters are just going to go, so I just shouldn't vote if I care about housing, right? It's like we're pointing out the failure, not providing the alternative. We have to point out the failure and provide the alternative. And I'll read that data, Brian, because I think it's
No, it's a
super
good
important.
transition. Yeah, let's talk about housing because I
All
think
right,
you're right on
so
messaging.
new data, and this is the House Republican press release, and they're pointing to data that was produced and reported on, and I'm going to see DJC Oregon is where they link to the data, but it's basically Census Bureau data. So Kotek, when she started her term, said I, and in her executive order, I think said I want to build 36,000 units a year. We were right around, we had been averaging about 20, and that 36 is obviously an increase, and the goal was to get that to build the extra 100,000 homes we are at a deficit now, and the several hundred thousand more we're projected to need. So she said I want to do 36,000 units a year.
Yeah,
I
she
think
just did
everybody,
math. She did math on
yeah,
what
she just
we
did some
need
simple math.
and
Now,
divided by the 20 years you need to have it, right?
and
Which was
everybody looked
dumb.
at that number and went, "Whoa." Sorry, you can't see my camera. Their eyes
Yeah.
were very wide and they were like, "Wow." And
I
builders were
said that
like, "This
too.
would
We
be
were all
awesome,
like,
but
yeah.
how?" And so permits issued in 2023, 17,000, almost 18,000. Permits issued in 2024, 14,000. Uh-oh. Projected permits in 2025, 11,000. Real uh-oh.
Yeah. I
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
So you have this trajectory. And this press release correctly points out that's the wrong direction. Okay. But, and I think it's fine. It's fine to point out the failure. But what is not included here and is not part of the message and needs to be part of the message is what's our alternative? Where are we going to build the houses? Well, that's complicated because rural issues and there's farms and we don't want to like build on any farmland, but like, okay, well, where are we going to reduce the regulations? Well, we want to have local control. And so we're afraid that if we take away any local control, then people are going to get mad at us and all that. Okay, so where are we going to get the money for housing? Well, we're not going to use government funds, which I think is the correct answer, by the way, but we're also not going to say that we need to have developers here because developers is a word that people really don't like. That's a scary word.
Uh,
We're not going to use the word developers. Again, all of these things where we've apparently made messaging decisions that aren't putting us in a position to be different on the issue. And if we're so and then and the other thing is if as a party we've decided we aren't going to tackle the housing issue, that's fine. There's no point in pointing out the governor's failure on that issue then because it doesn't get us anything. It doesn't point us anywhere. It doesn't help us go anywhere.
well, I think you're right. I was looking at I if you look at those building permits and I live in this stuff every day inside the Capitol, but I think the real problem oh sorry, gonna have to cough everybody. We'll have to put that out. Um there was an Eco Northwest thing that if you're very interested in watching is the state of Portland. And I like to dive past the numbers, right? The numbers are just numbers. But in crosstabs, we go a little deeper. I think you and I love to go deeper and to see why, because I think we're both inquisitive people. Like we just want to start asking why. And there was on Monday morning, there was Eco Northwest did a thing in Senate Business and Labor, and he touched a little bit on housing permits in Portland. And if you look at the numbers of why we're so bad at housing, Portland leads us, they lead us in the boom and they're leading us in the bust. There is in effect, without government money behind building permits in Portland, zero building permits being pulled in Portland.
Ooh.
Zero. So, I mean, there might be like three or four, but literally, if you took out the government subsidized building permits for like, affordable housing and some of that crap that's going on with the money, zero. So, whereas Portland at one point was doing, seven, 8,000 building permits a year, non-affordable housing units. So that's what was driving. So if you take that and add that to the number, it still doesn't get us there, right? But then couple that with 6.5% mortgage interest rates, couple that with inflation, couple that with, and then I think you get to because the land use policies haven't changed in Oregon. So it's not necessarily it's fair to point out that the failure is real, and I think that's real, and I think Kotek's failure started when she first said 36,000. That was her first failure is to put a real number on it, right? Because now you got a number to judge against, and so that's the real failure. But we have a land use problem. We have a land problem, just a raw land. After we had that conversation with Senator Cano, remember what was it, a couple days later? He went and pulled lots in Bend and sent us like non-builder owned lots for sale. So, the Polish homes, the big DR Hortons, that whatever they don't own, what's for sale? And there wasn't one in there. A city lot under 800 grand in Bend. So the reality is land is a big issue, and that is policy. And so definitely, and Kotek has definitely been protecting Thousand Friends, which is the thousand enemies of housing.
Well, and also, I mean, she had her bill to challenge them. It
Yeah.
was marked as a major threat. She fought them, and
Yeah.
and we fought with her together, and we lost on the Senate floor. And so
Yeah.
that is the question the people who want to build housing have to ask. And this is not just talking about the builders. This is talking about the government. This is talking about
Yeah.
anti-NIMBY or YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, pro-building Democrats who actually realize that our state and our economy will die if we don't build more housing because people won't come to live here, which means
Yeah.
businesses won't move here. If they don't want the state's economy to slowly die, they have to build housing. And if they want to build housing, they're gonna have to roll Thousand Friends of Oregon. But the willpower to do that has to be more than just the governor and Senate
Yes.
Republicans. It's got to be way bigger than that.
Yes, I
Everybody
agree.
has to want to roll these
It's
guys. And also,
the
by the way, they're all old. There isn't a single there's one guy from Central Oregon Land Watch who looks like he might be under 55.
yeah,
That's
right.
it. The rest of these guys are all not policy, but I think it's just ideology and like you said, they're just the thousand enemies
So
of building
if
things.
you go look at that Ego Northwest thing again, and just listen, it was about a 25 minute presentation. You know where they are going, Reagan? Clark County. People
Nevada.
are voting with their feet and they're
Or
moving.
no, Washington. Clark, are you
Yeah,
talking about
into
Clark County,
Washington. So
Washington?
they're moving up
Yeah.
to Vancouver. And he did some affordability heat maps and everything. And it just shows everybody like Washington County, like Clark County, sorry, in Washington is up like 8%.
Yeah.
So everybody's just moving up there. And then if they have to come to Portland for whatever work or whatever it is that they're doing, they don't care. They're just going to go live in Washington because Washington doesn't have,
Hmm.
our urban growth boundaries. They don't have the rules that we have that restrict that. I mean, literally drive housing into the ground here. And there's another thing, and I'll give you the link that is really interesting to look at, is the UGB map of Oregon that it's online. Anybody can go look and you can see where all the UGBs are. And you can see basically in the UGBs where we can build in Oregon. And it looks really, really small when you look in the entire state. I mean, we're
Hmm.
talking minimal amounts of land.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why we shouldn't. And we have brought in, the Republicans have brought in policy. And this, okay, I'm going to circle this back to your point. Great to point out the failures of her things, but why not in that press release put the 12 or 13 bills that Republicans had that would have actually been better relaxing policies that would have actually helped us build homes in Oregon? Why not put that in there? Why not say we have offered a different approach, and this is what our approach would have been, except for just blasting Kotek on her policy. And I think and it's not really her policy because even the Democrats in the House and the Senate, they're responsible for those policies because they have to vote them out. And they've been
Well,
the
and
they voted down Kotek's bill when Thousand Friends went. They went to the state Senate right in 23 and killed Kotek's bill.
I was gonna say that I mean, like her policies are dying and being whittled down and made more worthless in the legislative process. They haven't been made better. And I think if she had the ability to, she would make them. Now, I do think that Kotek does own anytime they have decided not to roll Thousand Friends. So that's her part of it, right? But there have been times where she's decided to try to roll them and just hasn't been successful. And some of that has been, some of that has been legitimate opposition, and some of that has been
Yeah.
illegitimate opposition. And Willamette Rick has reported on the death of that bill and how it happened and sort of the drama behind it. But it wasn't some of that stuff. Some of that was illegitimate political garbage that killed that bill, not legitimate lobbying on the issues.
Yeah.
But
Well, two big groups, right? I mean, two big groups really kill housing in Oregon on the Democrat side, that really hammer Democrat elected leaders.
yeah,
It's OLCV, Thousand Friends, right? That whatever Central Oregon Land Watch, that crazy
yep,
nutty, we should all live in rocks. They basically just don't want us building homes. I mean, that's just the reality, right? They
they
just
don't.
they
They
just don't.
do
They
not.
actually think they probably believe in there's too much population on the earth and we should probably kill off some people and
They do, but they
leave.
know that that is weird, and so they approach it
Yeah.
differently.
So they use
100%.
whatever means they can to stop housing. Senate Bill 100, they use water, they use, farmers, they use everything they
Yep.
can to literally kill growth at every turn that they possibly can. They don't even care. And then there's the other set of groups on the Democrat side, which is the unions. And the unions do everything they can to basically drive up the cost of housing to benefit them. They
Yep.
say to benefit their membership, right? So that's the
Hmm.
the the PLAs, the project labor agreements, that's all of the affordable housing complexes. They have to use prevailing wage and all this stuff just hampers the growth of housing. You can't do infill in the city of Portland and build above 4 stories for an affordable housing complex without paying prevailing wage, which increases the cost 50% of the whole building if you go above 4 stories. Can't do it. Not allowed. And they won't even entertain a discussion about that. Not only that, then you have the ground floor, which sits empty. They won't allow Reagan, they won't allow childcare, nonprofit childcare on the ground floor because it throws the whole project into prevailing wage. They won't give any inches at all. And all
Yep.
that does is drive up the cost of housing. And then we wonder why an affordable housing unit in Portland now runs $450,000 a door when market rate housing runs about 240 to $260,000 a door. So you tell me what the problem is. They're the problem. And I said, until the elected leadership, which they won't because they're in the majority and those are the people that fund their campaigns and those are the people that, will primary them and do all the things. But they have to have a real discussion about it. And what Republicans need to do is keep pointing out that we have policies that will fix this. We have bills that are working through, and we get places, right? I mean, Kotek was able to pass a bill in the short session, but it was a watered down version of her bill from 23. And it's just in every time there's something that comes up into the housing realm, but we should continue if we want to win, we need to continue to push. We have a plan. Here's the plan. Elect Republicans and we will enact the plan.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
I
really
think
kind of that simple, but there's
I think
nuances to it, but that's the
I
reality.
think we just need to all have I've been thinking about this. We just need like a summit. We need a summit for all the consultants to talk about like how we're gonna strategize our way through, and then we need kind of all the Republican leaders, elected and some not, right, and some
Yeah.
thinkers, the people that are really going to contribute, to sit down and hammer it out together. I think
Yeah. Well,
ultimately it's going
because
to have to be
there's
together.
two parts of and actually here's and I forgot the third leg of the stool. The third leg. I'm pointing at you, my camera, the third leg. The cities. We have some of the worst cities on planet Earth with planners that want to control everything in the world in regards to housing in their UGBs. And Portland is near the top. City of Sherwood is horrible. City of Eugene is horrible. Beaverton is horrible. Tiger's horrible. These places where people are living, like these are those things that should be leading the effort. City of Bend is completely done a 360. I mean, they had their city planner used to be on Central Oregon Land Watch, and he's now the one leading the way on helping, break through the rules because it's taken forever to get stuff through there because they want to control to the level of how big your yard should be in the front yard if you're D.R. Horton building homes in a residential community.
Right.
How many windows you should have. Like the design review is insane. And I have affordable housing builder friend of mine, developer, builder. They do need to come up with a different name because developer, even I say it, I feel like it's like dirty. Um, but he put in an application or he was gonna put in an application to build a 200 unit kind of complex in Portland at $250,000
Woof.
just for the application. Like that's stupid.
And I
So
guarantee you that money is not going to anything except for salaries of the people processing those applications over not a very quick period of time at all, months or years, and
it's a
with
profit center.
such little expertise. All right, so we're going pretty long here, so I want to do a
Yeah, I know.
quick lightning round on a handful of
Good.
headlines. Kotek and Oregon education officials defy White House order to defund DEI in schools. Feds threaten Oregon transportation funding over DEI and driver's license policies. Brian Iverson, you're the co-chair. How do you feel about, let's just make you the co-chair of Ways and Means. How do you feel about the executive branch taking it upon themselves to just say, we are pro DEI, no matter the cost? Are you excited about that if you're the co-chair?
No, I think you're going to make life really hard for us to try to fund education.
Yeah, yeah,
I think I mean there are some good things about DEI and there's some horrible things about DEI, right? I mean, I think that there's the philosophical approach that everybody should be included. The philosophical approach that we should be, deemed based on the character of who we are versus, right, the color of our skin. Like, I think we all agree on some basic principles, but the way it's written is it's changed what Trump's going after is that the DEI in these places and how they're applying it says no, it's actually more about the color of your skin. It's more about who you are and what you look like and what language you speak and your income level. It's identity politics versus, just saying we have a goal that we would want to have more women firefighters. So why not, have a goal to say we'd love to make this a field in which women could succeed,
yeah,
right? And I think that goal I'm on board with. I don't have a problem with that. And these schools, though, the problem with it is they get some of these people, these woke board members, in Wilsonville or whatever, who are just throttling down like crazy and can't handle it, and they just want to be woke as woke as woke, and push into all these things so they can tell their neighbors that how big they are and how great liberal they are, and these liberal white women living in Wilsonville that just want to tell all their friends that they're great, right? And it's just
yep,
horrible. And I think, and it makes Kate Lieber's job really hard because if they cut federal funding and education, I think is the biggest receiver of federal funds in Oregon besides Medicaid.
yeah.
It,
Healthcare education.
it could really be a problem. And I was like, wouldn't you ask if you're Kotek, Reagan, go to your lawyers and your staff and say, what do we got to rewrite to pass the muster?
Well, and that's not it. That's it because they can rewrite them, but even specifically if you read the Department of Transportation article, it says it doesn't matter what the policy is called. Doesn't matter if it's called diversity. Doesn't matter if it's just called general like human resources. If it's exclusionary, and that's basically our whole point. We're not anti-diversity. We're
Yeah,
anti-excluding people. If your goal of getting more female firefighters is to prevent men from becoming firefighters, you're
yeah,
failing. You are making a huge mistake. That does not make sense. That will not do it. If your goal is to prevent white kids from succeeding so that kids of color can succeed, you're failing. You're making a huge mistake.
yeah,
And that's the point is the policies are so out of whack now that their goal is to prevent some kids from being successful so that supposedly other kids can be successful. We've missed the rising tide lifts all boats. We're going to sink some boats so that other boats can survive. That's the strategy. And that's the whole point of it. It's not to eliminate. They're not going around and looking for in the federal government. Do you employ people of color? Fire them all. Do you employ women? Fire them all. That's not what they're doing.
yeah,
They are going through and saying, are your policies preventing certain types of people from being hired? Well, that would be called discrimination, and we outlawed that in 1965 with the Civil Rights Act. I think it was
yes.
65. So anyway, that's what they're
Well,
doing.
I'm really glad you're going after the driver's license policies here because that's one that, I think is super huge is because you get a driver's license and you show a utility bill, now I can register to vote. It's just silly.
And there was a ballot measure to ban it.
Yeah.
And Democrats just said, we're just gonna overturn the will of the voters. We'll just wait a little bit and then overturn the will." All right, second
Yeah.
lightning round piece. And I also added, by the way, there'll be a link. Port of Portland, so much federal funds because
Yeah.
they're trying to get like 10 million just to stay open for the Terminal 6. They have so much federal funding, they've already pulled their DEI policies. They're like, nope, we're not messing around with that. I'm fascinated by the legislature.
Yeah. And isn't the
Excuse
Port of
me.
Portland commissioners, those are all appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct.
Crazy.
And they're not she's not punishing them, which I think is interesting. So,
Yeah, very
um
interesting. Funny.
all
She
right,
didn't
so the
blast
last
them. Did
one,
you see a press release, her blasting Port of Portland for it?
I have not seen that. Nope,
I'm missing that
haven't
one.
seen it.
I'll go take a look.
Clackamas. Here, that's something for Indivisible, the Democrats crazy group that can go after Kotek and say, "Hey, why aren't you doing this?" Clackamas County. There's
Oh
five
yeah.
final applicants for this open commission seat. So we had Commissioner West on. He was talking a little about this process. The two commissioners, so Mark Schull, the one of the ones that had lost to Melissa Fireside,
Yeah.
and then Ken Humbertson, the one who lost to Mark Schull, both applied. They did not make the cut for final five. There were 59 applicants, by the way.
That's
Board has
crazy.
settled on five applicants. Happy Valley Mayor Tom Ellis, former Damascus Mayor Diana Helm, which I think is hilarious because Damascus has and has not been a city.
Yeah, like where
Lake
is she been? She's
Oswego.
rolling that way back.
It is fascinating. Lake Oswego counselor and former Republican and Democrat for treasurer
Yeah.
Jeff Goodman, Metro counselor Christine Lewis, and former Lake Oswego counselor Jackie Mans. And so one of the things with those five that you notice is that voters somewhere in Clackamas County have elected this person before, which I think is kind of a
Yeah.
good baseline. You kind of don't want to take somebody who's never run for any office and then just make them a commissioner. That's probably not for an appointment. That's probably not the like ideal thing to do. If you've never served on any board, any commission, any anything, you should probably not. Now, I would say just to just to preface that, I think business experience and on serving on a board is equivalent to serving on like a school board. It's not elected, but you get some of the same skills and do some of the same things, right? But for the most part, picking someone with former elected experience makes sense in this context.
Yeah, I know a few of those names on there. $130,000 for a county commissioner job. That's like almost 50 grand more than the governor makes, which is pretty hilarious. when you think about it from a dollar perspective. Uh, former Lake Oswego counselors. I mean, like you said, Goodman was a Republican when he was the Lake Oswego counselor. I think a Metro counselor that if it's Metro counselor, that would basically rule her out of my like, nope, no thanks, because I think Metro is probably one of the worst organizations that has ever been created in the history of government. Speaking of another problem with housing is Metro. They're a big problem with it because they control the UGBs for everything, and they're even worse. So, and look at how worse Metro's gotten, and I would imagine that Christine Lewis is probably a crazy left winger. Um, Goodman's fine, but I just think he's milk toast. I mean, I don't. I think, but the problem is it's 2-2, right? On the two Republicans, two Democrats, on the commission right now, so they kind of have to agree on somebody. So I would imagine out of this group, it's probably going to be somebody who they all kind of seem to be kind of maybe middle of the road. Maybe Goodman does get a leg up because he was a Democrat and a Republican, you know. I'd probably want that if I was a Republican. I'd be like, well, who can I beat? That's the first thing I'd look at because they got to run
It's
again in
right.
26. Uh,
Exactly.
I do find it interesting that they just ditched Humberson and Scholl because that does tell you that they're serious about. And Ben said that when he was on the podcast talking about it, that he thought, we're going to get somebody no matter what better than Fireside. That's not going to be as partisan, and I think that's good for Clackamas County. Um, Tom Ellis, I've heard, is a pretty good guy there in Happy Valley. They deal with a lot of growth. They have a lot of issues. I-205 stuff. Somebody like that could bring a decent voice, I think, because Ben is kind of from the south of the district. I think the Lake Oswego people, I would rule them out because they're, probably part of those DEI woke left people that want to make sure that they impress their friends. So, of course, they might be easier to beat. So I don't know what they're going for, but Ben wants to govern the county, and so I would say that he's going to pick somebody who best will help them achieve their goals in Clackamas County, and I'd probably defer to him to even make a pick on this one. But very interesting that 59 people. That's pretty awesome.
And I think one of the things too, Brian, I think you're right. If I were gonna pick, if I was looking at this, I would go no Metro, so no Christine Lewis
Yeah. Bye
immediately.
bye.
I Me personally, I don't think that I think Jeff Goodman may have the skills to be elected, but I don't like a lot of the choices he's made in terms of how he's tried to run for higher office.
Yeah.
And
It's not
the
convicted.
extent, yeah, I totally agree with that. So I would eliminate him. I would look at Ellis, I would look at Helm, and I'd look at Jackie Mance. But I think
Hmm.
the first two are actually the ones, I think like you said, Lake Oswego also sort of not probably
Yeah.
exactly representative of the rest of the county, most of the rest of the county, a little more too Portland centric, a little more too what's the word, rich and
Yeah.
elitist.
I'd say my interview question would be, do you want the lake open to the public or not?
That would be perfect. That'd be so good. So I'd kind of look at the first two, and I think and Ellis is interesting because I don't think he's a Republican. He might be a Democrat or not affiliated, but he has supported Lori Chavez Dreamer
Yeah.
for Congress. So that is kind of a thing
He's
where
an
he
NAP.
he
Yeah.
is sort of in the middle in a lot of ways, and so I think that's interesting. So. We
Yeah.
need to kind of wrap it up, but I do think, Brian, I want to have a debate episode coming up here soon because we were doing all
All
this
right.
talking about city um, government and all the problems that they have and all the problems they have with funding. And so I actually have a idea. So I'm going to posit a solution. I am not saying I'm correct or that it's the right solution, but I'm going to posit a solution. We have a system that is federal, state, local government, okay? Not federal, state, local government. So I think there is a consideration for should cities even exist? If they can't fund their government, if they can't fund their public safety, if they can't fund their roads without help, would it make sense to consolidate cities into their counties and just have counties run
Ah,
roads, public safety, and local government. I mean, why do we need an extra layer of rules? Can't a county just say, oh, okay, here's our lawn sign rule for all the cities in the county? Well, that would be really helpful and clear if you're running a campaign. Here's our rules for building. Here's our whatever. Having two layers, county and city, to me does not make sense. Keep I and a thousand friends immediately. Wow, we got the urban growth bound. Okay, the urban growth boundaries can stay because it tells you which part of your county is urban and which part of your county is rural. But that
Sure.
doesn't mean we need a city government to exist. To anyway, it's the thought.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco consolidated their county and city into one government. There's debate about Portland and Multnomah County consolidating into one big dysfunctional government instead of two medium to
Three.
large
Well, they get
size
three because you got Metro on top
dysfunctional.
of that.
Right. Also, Metro shouldn't
Yeah.
exist. It just shouldn't. It shouldn't exist. Repeal
Oh,
Metro. Close Metro.
Metro
100%.
should go away.
Anyway, so we
That's
need to
dumb.
find somebody who's pro cities that
Okay.
isn't the lobbyist for cities to like give us the argument. Why should cities exist? Because in a lot of ways, you look at especially the way they're structured in Oregon, they're underfunded. They can't solve problems. They get in the way a lot. I mean, it's so interesting to me
Hmm.
that we have this model and we haven't thought about, well, should cities exist?
There's tons of redundancies that happen,
Should
within
counties run
government.
schools? Should counties have an education department and just run the schools instead of having 196 school
Well,
boards?
well, because
I
there's
mean,
only
it's
36 counties. The problem is like school boards they spread. I mean, we should be consolidating school boards into, I think,
we
ESD
should.
zones because what are
Yeah.
there, 16 ESDs only?
Yeah, I mean, you
I
have, and
mean,
ESD is another level of government. Well, why does that
oh,
exist? Why isn't the county education department supervising the
unions,
schools then? Maybe
Reagan,
you don't
unions.
eliminate the school board, but they report directly to the county or the two counties instead of anyway. We waste a lot
I
of
love that
money.
discussion, though. I think that's a great idea. That'd be fun to have.
Yeah,
Better government and how do you layer government in which it makes the most sense? I think that cities always like to try, oh, I mean, we've had Marion County. What do they have? 16 cities in their county. Crook County has one city, Prineville. That's it.
right.
You
hmm
know, so they don't, but they still have their own road department. You're like, why do you have your own road department?
You
Yeah,
should even
but the
if you don't eliminate the city of Prineville, you guys should just figure out how to have an intergovernmental agreement to merge your road departments
yeah,
because guaranteed there's going to be waste.
they
And
did for
I'm
a
not saying
while.
they're
Yeah,
not
they used to.
duplicating, but it just makes sense, I think, in a lot of ways.
And then every county should have its own senator, by the way. State Senate should be one senator per county, not these equal
Love it.
representation. So, of course, the
Love it.
Democrats will never go for that because we would be in control of at least one chamber. Uh, you're also lining up some good housing discussion as we kind of work a little bit through what kind of comes out of housing on both chambers. We'll have a few of the housing people on to kind of talk about the bills, and as I do think we got a couple of good ones we're cooking through to really kind of up the process, cut some red tape. It's not going to change. It's not going to move us from 12,000 building permits to 36,000 by any means, but it's you got to take bites at the apple, and we got to take what we can get, and I think we came up with a really good positive housing structure. We got a couple of good ideas that are percolating that even some of the Dems are okay. I know Representative Brees Iverson has a couple of good ideas that you've been working on and pushing that we've had some hearings. So we'll talk about those and really kind of deep dive housing, which should be kind of fun for at least people that like housing.
Awesome. Well, have a good time in Arizona, and I
Hard
think we
not
should
to.
talk more. The vibes, I'm glad you're in Arizona and I'm going to Tennessee for a week. The vibes in Salem are bad right now. The
Yeah,
vibes are bad. So we need a break. We need a mid-session, 1 week
a good idea.
reset for everybody to go on vacation,
Yeah,
come back more rested.
Washington's done. I
Oh
mean, that
gosh.
sucks. Arizona's done. They're just doing some budgeting and they're out. Again, go back to your idea. 100 days, we'd be done right now.
There's no argument for keeping it longer. Are you gonna argue with a straight face that Washington and Arizona have worse legislatures because they meet for
Yeah,
less time? No.
yeah,
That's a dumb
I
argument.
agree.
So, all right. Well, let's all reset and we'll be back
Cool.
with you again soon.
Later.
Thanks for listening.